Well, good evening, folks. This is the meeting of the Board of Adjustments, and we'll have a roll call.
We have one board member absent this evening, and that's Vice Chair Roberts.
We'll have the Pledge of Allegiance then. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, the first thing we need to do is the approval of the January 8th, 2024 Board of Adjustment regular meeting minutes. Were there any questions on it? Do I have a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Now, Stacy?
Oh, okay, thank you.
Pardon me, let me just put this back up. Thank you, Chairman Cross, members of the Board of Adjustment. I don't have a PowerPoint slide for this first agenda item, which is an appeals case, which we've seen a couple in the last few years. What the case involves is confirming the decision of the zoning administrator regarding building setbacks in the rural 190 single-family zoning district. Specifically, the address that in question is at 8610 East Maverick Circle in the Cowtract Estates 2 subdivision. The challenge is to the zoning administrator's assertion that the setbacks that were established when the home was built, originally in 1997, are applicable today. When I say zoning administrator, that is me. That is my role, as I was designated by the town administrator to carry on those responsibilities. There are no legal nonconforming circumstances that exist related to this request, either based on the setbacks today or the setbacks that are being requested. And this is a public hearing, and it did require notification requirements, and those were met. Basically, it required a legal ad and a posting at the property. The zoning ordinance is not always black and white. I think we all think it is. It's sort of our regulations, and they are regulations, but not all properties fit into kind of this neat little box that we have all these requirements and we check off the boxes, so to speak, and a development moves forward. I would say that related to setbacks and the way that I have, since I've been zoning administrator, since I got here, I've utilized, particularly with developments that are already present today, the properties that have been built. A lot of times I will look back at historical data that we have in our archives, because there are times where there's just properties that were built before we had our zoning regulations in place. And then zoning regulations have changed from time to time throughout the years. I always felt that, so for example, with development standards, a lot of times those can be in question, and that's the question that we have this evening. But there's setbacks, there's lot coverage, there's lot disturbance. These are things that you all are familiar with. I just always felt that it was a fair and consistent way to enforce these design guidelines, or they're not design guidelines, these design standards, so that I think when there's an understanding of your surroundings, and I'm kind of speaking to neighbors in particular, that there's an understanding based on what has been, what I would say, memorialized when the development first occurred. So I think that it allows for kind of this general understanding of what will be happening potentially, based on what the town's going to monitor. I think it gets difficult when we look at standards such as setbacks and then come back and modify them later. And so I go back to, again, that when there's a question of what the development standards are, if there is information in our archives, I will apply it that way. It's true that you read the narrative, and the applicant will have a moment, the appellant I should say, to speak as well. There are minimal impacts as they want to enforce the current zoning ordinance requirements. But I think the thing we have to think about is the precedent it might set, for one, and that if there is a way that probably the path to potentially solving this issue would probably be more a variance. Now, the problem with the variance in this circumstance, and we talked this through with the appellant as well, is that they don't have any legal non-conforming conditions either, so there's no hardships present. So I think they wanted to present the case to you and have you determine what you felt was best in terms of enforcing the zoning ordinance and the way I have interpreted it. So with that said, I'll invite you up if you'd like to go ahead and say who you are and present your case.
Put the speaker where you can hear you.
Yeah, no, I haven't pulled it up. Oh, it might not be on. Let's see. Oh, thanks.
There, better?
There you go.
Oh. So Mike Paluccio, Carefree Builders, have the homeowner Roberto and Stuart, Roberto and Stuart Strauss, sorry. Basically, we're trying to build a garage studio for them, and in order to do that, the setbacks, we're asking them change the setbacks to the current standards today, because if you look at, I don't know if you have this in front of you, but the Alta survey that Graham drew would be to what we are trying to get our setbacks.
Is it, yeah, show us the picture.
And you have it in your reports. It's,
Okay,
Okay, thank
thank
you.
you. Okay, but we're
No,
now,
we have it, you just referred to.
I was looking at
a
blueprint.
drawing.
Yeah, that's okay, here we are.
That's what we're trying to get it actually switched to, which is what the neighbor has is 30 foot, and this would be 30 foot. Right now, it's 60 foot. This would allow them to put their garage studio and art studio up closer to the garage that they have now versus further back down the hill, which will obstruct views for them.
Do you have the drawing on the
I mean, I can pull it up.
computers?
Yeah, that'd be helpful.
Oh, to pull it up on the screen?
Yeah, so that we can.
Let me think about how we can do that. Okay, I just.
Yeah, it's on that link in the packet, I think.
All right, let me just see if I've got this available. Give me a moment. Oh, good.
May I ask, were there any other locations on the property which were considered?
There is further down the hill, like I said, would obstruct their views from the current house. So it could go further down, but then it also puts the new garage that they want further down the hill. So they're trying to keep it closer
Not that one.
to where the garage is now.
Boulders.
Yeah, it's a different one.
And again, if it was to switch, because
This
the
one.
front side is actually Maverick, so if you go to the current standards, it would be correct today.
Say that again, what you just said, please?
So the front side is Maverick, so if you switch the front to the back, your setbacks would change, would to bring it to the current standards today.
Thank you.
How high are
don't have
the
any
proposed buildings?
Was it 18, I think 18 feet?
Okay, you want their, okay.
Okay.
Actually, can you go back to the original drawing that was in your file, the blue line?
Yeah.
And is this enough to see this? You're okay with this? So you see all what you needed to see on this page?
Yeah, but the
Okay.
previous
Yep.
that has, identifies elements of the building. So,
Blueprint right there.
Right, this is the.
That's
this
the
is-
original blueprint, right?
and if you load that up a little bit,
So I believe, so right now off of Maverick, they have 30 feet and it's 60 feet on the side.
Right, we're trying to get it to the 30, yeah.
They'd like it to be 30, and it's true, today's,
Which is what the neighbor is as well. Sorry, Stacy.
no, you're okay, I'm just wanted to show them, so that it's true, so they're a corner lot, so our corner lot requirements today say the shorter leg that is on street frontage is the front. And so I think what they're saying is Maverick is the shorter leg of the two, actually, I think there's three that abut, actually cow track abuts the property as well.
Yeah.
But basically, the smaller leg is typically today for residential, what we consider the front yard.
Okay.
But for whatever reason, when this was built, they,
On this picture, where would the new garage go?
How do I show you that?
are you saying it'd be
Yeah,
around?
just right, yeah,
Yeah.
To the
so
left?
Stacy, like
Yeah,
right here.
Can you
Like
point
right-
to that?
like right about in here.
That little round thing?
That's the garage, that's the current garage, so it's
Okay.
gonna go just to the left of that there, yeah.
I know where that
Okay.
2645 is.
And what is the alternate place that you looked at?
So the other option is to go further down the hill here, which again would obstruct these views from this bedroom. And visible from the pool, right?
The garage would be quite a distance from entering the house from the current
Well, is it going to be a garage or a studio?
It's a garage, and then on the back is a studio.
Art studio in the back.
So you didn't want to take the road going around to the backside, is what you're saying too? That'd be, you'd have to incur that as well.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
So, a question for you, Stacy. What would the prospects be for a variance to encroach into the setback?
Right. This is a little bit sort of, not studied in depth. I mean, the issue being is that there's no non-conforming circumstances on the property other than these setbacks that seem to be in question. The lot is a legal size. The building is located legally based on what the setbacks were at that time. There's no washes, there's no natural features that impede upon the property to encumber it as well. Maybe a case could be made based on where the existing garage is being proposed. Expanding that makes it difficult. Is it a two-car garage or a three-car garage? Two-car garage. In Carefree, that 3 is more common.
The other note to that is if we switch the setbacks, we're not encroaching. The house wouldn't encroach, nothing would encroach. It would just be switched.
I understand that, but I'm asking, rather than change something that's been a matter long settled since
97.
97, if a variance were applied, what would be, walk that through for me. You're saying that there's no hardship per se?
Not an obvious hardship, I would say.
Is determination of a hardship up to the Board of Adjustment?
I mean, the case would come before you, yes. It would, it would go through that public hearing process. This is a hearing as well, but this would involve a notification process. It sounds like, though, they've met with the neighbors before. I don't mean to speak for you. I think you've had conversations with them. So, those are sort of the things that can trip up, a variance. Usually, like if the garage was already in that setback, I would consider that, that's more of a legal non-conforming condition. It is very close to the setback, so, like I said, I'm sort of talking out loud at the moment. I don't know what will, how you all would determine that if it became a variance case. So those are sort of the things that might be considered. Like they, as they're mentioning, logically in terms of, the house layout, the floor plan, there might be some consideration in that regard.
So if I understand what you're saying, I mean, if we uphold the zoning the way it is right now, but they can actually come in with a variance request.
They can come in with a variance request,
Yeah.
yes, they can. But again, it'll be a case that comes before you to understand all of the parameters. I mean, like, for example, this, we went back and forth on this, and, I mean, they chose to move forward with a appeal, which was perfectly fine. I had concerns about not having a hardship, but we didn't really go into too much detail, I think, in fairness, about how to create a variance case. But ultimately, you'll make that decision then as well.
Would it be fair to say that the hardship could be people's views, obstructing other neighbors' views?
Also cost, it's gonna cost more to go down the hill and bring more driveway. So yes, there's more cost involved in that as well.
No, you don't understand what we're saying.
Yeah,
We're saying, leave the zoning, the frontage as it is,
I
and grant
understand.
you a variance, which would allow you to put the garage exactly
Oh,
where you
okay,
want.
yeah,
it.
we're trying to figure
We're
out
just-
what
we're
the
just-
hardship.
Figure out a way to
We're
help you
just
out.
sprinkling
Yeah.
legal holy water on it in a different way.
And we're making it fair for future generations. So,
And that's where that's where I come from, is, you know, the next one that comes in is
Yeah.
that there's always a little nuance to it, and we sort of can potentially lose something that I think, well, at least I think it's the right way to implement our development standards. But in any case, right, so I mean, I think you could talk about you could talk about less disturbance. I don't think they're obstructing neighbors' views. I think it's more their own views.
well, it'd be
So-
like an eyesore maybe.
No, not even that.
Well, I mean, if it's back behind and they have to look at this new building that wasn't there for 20 years, and all of a sudden they're looking at it, I might consider it an eyesore.
You know, the streets up here and the streets
But
over
they have
here.
you have neighbors behind you down there, don't you?
If it's further down,
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
you could see it from Cow Track, you could see it from Silver Saddle, and more people would
That's what I'm
see it.
talking about.
What we're talking about is tucked in. I mean, definitely the front of our house is on Maverick. I know the way it was set up in 1997, but the front door's there, the driveway's there, everything is Maverick, the address, but for some reason, by our pool is showing front door or front. So naturally, changing that would be the best way for us, but understand you have some
We're just
historical
looking
nature
for-
you want to uphold.
Correct,
Right.
that's what we're looking for, right.
Well, I wonder, there's so much inconsistency on this in the older lots in terms of addresses. Rather than go into a variance on planning and zoning, be better off to come in with a variance request and a hearing on that. The way I would look at it, rather than getting into changing, because there's all kinds of inconsistencies in the corner lots and what's the front and what's the back, and particularly in the older subdivisions, and yeah, we don't want to I don't think we want to get into
We have
that.
the architect speak as well. Sure.
Sure.
Can't hear you.
That's the architect right there.
Chairman, Commissioners, my name's Tyler Green. I'm not here for this project, I'm here for the next project, but I, as it happens, am dealing with a situation exactly like this in the city of Phoenix right now, and I thought it might be helpful to get, perspective from a different jurisdiction. I'm working on a small lot with a house that was obvious, on a corner lot. House was obviously set up with the front of the house on the longer street, and that was the front setback. The city of Phoenix now is saying that the shorter street is the front, and they are applying those setbacks to this rule. So they're taking a different interpretation of it. They're saying that they are going to apply the current setbacks to this property, even though it was obviously set up with the opposite setbacks when it was built in the 70s. So I just thought maybe a different perspective. It seems like, for is a reasonable thing, and I just thought I'd throw that in. Thank you.
May I ask how many of your bedrooms are going to be impacted by it being placed in the alternate location?
It would be one bedroom and the pool area.
So
Okay.
the main part of the house is we have like a great room, so that great room would also have a view over the pool. Right now it's, pool and then just
It's
beautiful
open.
nature, but, yeah, we would then have to obstruct that, which,
But it's not exactly obstructed, is it? Because there's a fair slope on your property. towards the west.
I mean, we laid it out,
Yeah.
and it still obstructs.
Obstructs, okay.
Any other questions?
You all might wanna, you might wanna discuss it amongst yourselves, and then this is also a hearing. I don't know if anybody else is here to speak on the application, but.
There's like almost every property that's in town when it was incorporated in 1984 has some peculiarity to it. One of the cases we're going to hear, for example, well, I'm just very concerned about switching the pattern that we've had with unknown consequences. Because somebody else could come up and say, well, you've already applied the shortest street, the new rule, the new zoning rule to your property, therefore apply it to mine. But it's in a totally different, I mean, we just don't even know. That's my problem. Whereas if we just give a variance, oh, it's terrible, it's just awful. It's, then we can achieve what you're looking to achieve without changing
Right.
the frontage,
Yeah.
right? I mean, do you have to come back for another meeting? But I don't, I feel more
I
comfortable.
agree with that.
I feel more comfortable doing that than to shuffle the deck and with unknown cards coming up. It bothers me.
There's just too many setups like this from before incorporation and everything else. I mean,
Yeah, but it's allowing it to your current standards. It's not changing, you're not changing anything or doing anything offbeat.
but we're
It's
changing
actually-
the zoning though.
But it's gonna be the current
Change
standard,
the
it's gonna be
zoning.
what you have today. It's gonna be legal, and there's no encroachment. Like if the building, if we were gonna do that and the existing building is encroaching that, I could say, well, I understand that, but this is totally clean cut. I mean, it's.
Yeah, but our problem is it creates a precedent.
Yeah.
That says, oh, you've had another property in here that has asserted that the shortest street is the front, that's the current code, and it should apply to every property regardless of how it was originally platted and setbacks established and everything else. And in your instance, it doesn't cause any particular problem to change that, but we have no idea what it does to 200 other properties. That's my problem with it.
Understood, but then the issue is the variance, because as I'm listening to you all talk about it, it doesn't seem like there is one. There's a rational reason to give us a variance.
If you were to move it down, that would be, would that garage fall, the alternative location is further up the driveway?
Down,
Down and around.
in towards the backyard.
Wait a minute.
It's
Lem-
gonna be back in this
I don't
area.
know the topography here. So when you drive up to the existing garage, is the new garage gonna be beyond that or before that? Beyond that, so it's further up. Okay, so would that whole garage fall into the existing disturbed area?
Yes, yes.
For the most part. For the most part, I would agree.
But there would be additional disturbance
If they move the garage behind the home,
farther up the driveway or around the corner.
up the driveway, I would say heading towards Cow Track.
Okay.
If they headed, they're saying they'll go beyond their existing garage, they'll
Right.
go place it within the buildable area. It looks to be behind their yard, behind their existing home, and it would create more disturbance, correct?
Where is, on the picture that we have that says lot 39, the one that was in our packet, the
This-
black and white one,
Okay.
where is the existing garage now? Which,
Are you talking about this,
was the one before
go
this?
on before?
Blueprint?
No, the
this-
black,
Yeah, this one,
This one
and
we're looking-
zoom into it.
Yeah.
This is the one that we're looking
That
at.
one.
Where is the existing garage now? If
It's
you
right-
point there,
it's
you have
right
to
in here.
show her so she can
It's right
point
in
out.
here.
Oh, I see.
See, they pull in beyond that curved area. It's
That's
that,
the
it's that,
driveway, yeah. next to
it's
that.
that straight area. So they would go beyond, this is where if they, well, I don't know. I think this is is this the new proposal with the setbacks modified?
The
So
round
it is
thing.
still a it's still a detached garage.
Right,
Oh, I see.
Oh, it's a detached garage.
correct.
Uh-huh.
See, it's the new disturbance.
Yeah, yeah.
I saw that, okay.
Yeah, and actually, if you bring it further down the hill, you're disturbing more of the land versus
To go back behind it.
Mhm.
Okay.
to do the variant, yeah.
Do we have? Oh,
Yeah,
so this is the in the slide that we're looking at that says lot 39. The garage is actually the circle plus a square that
Yeah,
extends
that's the
north.
proposed,
That's the
right
proposed,
there.
Yes. Okay.
That's the end of the driveway there, that straight, yep, right there.
and this is the existing setbacks.
So I have a question. When we build in any city, anytime we build, we're asked to bring everything up to current standards. That's why I don't understand why doing it this way, we're bringing it up to current standards, so I'm not sure why that.
Are
was
you
moved.
really bringing the entire house up to current standards?
Well,
or
no, just the.
Just the one part that
No,
we're talking about?
and when we build it, it's gonna be current, night
The
sky
garage
ordinance,
will be
all of
current.
that.
Yes, yeah.
I don't disagree with what he's saying. It's just, it's a little different in Carefree. I understand that other municipalities have, their interpretations and how they have their codes. I think as Commissioner Burns mentioned, it's about sort of being consistent and applying historic standards when a property's already been built, in the sense that it's sort of been memorialized and that it's located where it's located. For example, if the setback, let's say the setbacks changed and created a non-conforming condition, I mean, we would still have to go back and look at, I think it's more fair to look at, if a development standard changed and created more of a problem or a hardship, I think that potentially could be an issue as well. But again, it's how I've interpreted sort of applying our development standards. There is something to be said about the fact that it does align with the rest of the neighborhood's development standards. It does meet our current town standards. It's just it's a comfort of not this project, but the next one.
Because if you look at this map the way it is now, the Lot 39 black and white one, you'd be changing 30s into 60s and 60s into 30s.
Yeah.
That's what we want to do.
Yeah, but then,
Right.
then the 60s, then you're already into it already. Pretty close.
Yeah, it's out.
I mean, this lot is a very large lot. It has different zoning. It's probably more of an issue with our smaller lot zoning, but it's kind of this, this back and forth. So then if something doesn't work and a future, I'm not saying it's going to be you, or a future owner wants it to go back to change the standards based on the historic standards that we have, it's sort of, we have to sort of move forward with the development standards that are in place when the home was built. Otherwise, people start going back and forth, based on what their development needs might be, and, then we lose those development standards.
Except rationally, no one would have their front door where the pool is, meaning that's where
Okay.
the front of our house is. So no one could come to you and say, I want to go back to my front door or the front of my lot being where the pool is on Silver Saddle. 'Cause is it Silver Saddle in front now of our house listed?
I believe that that was what they considered the front yard, yes.
And so you see Silver Saddle.
Silver
You're gonna
Saddle.
get on our property from Silver Saddle.
Right, the way that development standards, in particular, the way that setbacks work, it's not about the actual front door, it's just trying to determine those, the buildable area of your lot. So I understand what you're saying, and I get it, I think a lot of people rationalize it that way. In zoning, it's more about sort of establishing that envelope, and, for example, we don't force a property to have a front door on a certain street if they don't want it to be, so,
But we're
This-
within the 60-30 either way.
Yeah.
And that's important.
with your front, okay.
What about with the HOA? Is there, there's no HOA?
Not in that
We
neighborhood.
only have 2 neighbors on our street, and both of them have no objections.
It's a tough one.
This is a tough one.
Theoretically, if
I
you, if you go by what you said, building, I mean, that means if we start to build, we have to build historically? No, we have to build currently. So we want to keep our building up to current standards, again, trying to flip the lot back to the current standards.
Right, I guess what I mean is what the historic setbacks that were established, because I think the issue is that, again, for this particular project, that might make sense, other projects, it might not make sense. And
Yeah.
so, you know, we have to be careful about, you know, adjusting setbacks, because, again, you could end up with a lot that is supposed to have setbacks of 60 feet front and rear and 30 on the sides, and if you keep modifying, going back and forth, then you ultimately have 30 feet on all the sides. So.
Yeah, I don't,
I mean, that's kind of an extreme logic, but like I said, it's, you know, this is a larger lot, it's an interesting question. And I guess the ultimate question is, I think you're trying to be understanding and trying to help them accomplish what they need to accomplish. And I would like to do so as well. It's just that based on variances and those legal requirements, the architect Tyler Green who just spoke, I mean, he's creative, he's gonna be presenting a case for the next property, that's a variance as well. You know, there might be a way to create a narrative that meets a variance standards.
well,
Lon, what do you think?
I tend to agree. I mean, I understand the situation, but I think it should have been a variance.
yeah.
That's what they're saying too.
It's the same thing. I think we ought to, I'm gonna make a motion that we, maintain things the way they are now, and, without challenge, leave the zoning administrator's interpretation in place. We got a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those against? Okay. Leave it as is. It opens up too many other possibilities down the road. I mean, my neighborhood was built in 64, 65, and there's a couple of houses in there, the same doggone thing, and the street address different from the front and back, and, front doors, back doors. And I think we just open up, it better off just coming with requesting a variance.
Okay. And what happens if the variance is denied at that point?
Say what?
What happens if the variance is denied at that point?
Depends on how well you put it together.
You've got somewhere else on the property that you can put it, right?
It's not an acceptable location. But, I mean, we love Carefree, we're
Yeah.
here for the long term, and we will be back, and hopefully we have your support on the variance. How's that?
I think that's the point. It's the precedent set with the argument you put forth. We're uncomfortable. We're not uncomfortable with considering a variance.
Right.
But that does not seem to have wide-ranging impact. That's unpredictable, frankly.
We understand precedent, and we appreciate, your consideration of it, and we'll be back next month.
Come back with photos too. I want to see like the views. absolutely.
Where our front is on Maverick.
I've been out there already.
Great.
Was out there
Thank you
Was
very
out
much.
there yesterday.
Thank you very much.
All right, that's all we have. Oh. Listen, I got the right one? Yeah.
Boulder Drive,
Oh, so it's item number 3 then?
right.
Yes,
Okay.
Yeah, Boulder Drive.
okay. Are you
Yeah.
ready? Okay. This is a variance case for the property located at 1029 Boulder Drive in the Boulders Carefree subdivision. The applicant and architect, Mr. Tyler Green, is here, as well as the owners, Mr. and Mrs. Goran and Jennifer Cedarwall. And moving sort of, oh, sorry, so many computers up here now. The specific request is related to a variance for a pool and a spa, as well as the pool barrier. It's to allow for, again, the new pool, where, as you know, today in Carefree, we do not allow, we consider a pool a structure. We consider any kind of swimming pool, spa a structure. So it's not permitted in any rear yard or any building setbacks. In this case, it's in the rear yard that they're looking for relief from, as well as the required pool barrier, where it's close to meeting the requirements, but it needs an extra 10 inches in order to create a comfortable rear yard space. It's important to note that the pool equipment will be located in the buildable area, so the variance request is in regards to the equipment itself. And then there is an associated fill waiver, which we'll talk about at our next meeting. Just to look quickly again at, specifically at its location in the boulders, I think what's interesting about the property, I'll come closer. It does have a landscape buffer to the west. There's a tract of land that basically encircles. It's also around up to the north. There is a neighbor to directly to the east of the property. And looking a little bit more specifically at the site, again, we're talking about, like we did at our last case, encumbrances, things that are what I would consider hardships that make it difficult for a property to develop versus a property that didn't have these, in this case, these environmental features. Again, also, this being, in our zoning district, R118, which are our smaller lots, it does make it difficult at times to develop a backyard, particularly something like a pool, because it's limited space based on setbacks, as well as, and you can see on this property, they have 2 washes, and each of these washes exceed a flow rate of more than 50 cubic feet per second, and in fact converge and become even greater in terms of its velocity, of its flow rate. To look at the request specifically, this just highlights what the setbacks look like in terms of from the property boundary. They're looking for about 24 feet to the spa, about 20 feet to the pool itself, and again, 14 and a couple of inches to the pool barrier itself.
The mountain goes.
I'm sorry, that's mislabeled. Actually, that building setback is not 60 feet, it's 30 feet. In terms of citizen participation, they complied with our requirements. 2 residents did reach out to the applicant. There were no objections to this particular request for the pool setback itself. The applicant and staff received feedback regarding the casita, which we will talk about in our next case. But once again, there was no issue with the pool. With that said, I'm happy to answer any questions. The applicant will make a presentation after that as well. You're welcome to ask questions of the applicant, and then we'll open up the public hearing for any kind of public input or
Anybody got any
response.
questions?
Yeah, I do. Stacy, on, I guess the first page, second page of, bottom of the first page, second page of your staff analysis, you said the general plan designates this as a low-density residential 1 acre minimum. But it's zoned at 18,000 square feet minimum lot size, which is less than an acre.
It is. This is the boulders, for one.
I understand that
And
this is a legal non-conforming, right?
Yes.
Okay, but I thought that, just going back to our general plan discussion. We've got a general plan, and this
Right.
is, the zoning is more restrictive than the general plan.
That is correct.
So where does that leave us with all of the discussions we've had on the general plan?
Well, I don't want to get in too much of a discussion about the general plan at the moment, but, I mean, again.
Put that down for Matt to discuss,
We
or
can,
legal counsel to
we can
discuss
put that
with
on
us.
the list, but I would say is, I mean, there's a lot of cases like that with the general plan in particular. I don't want to get into too much of a controversial conversation, but there's many land uses that have entitled zoning that doesn't match the land use. For example, it's a bit of an opposite circumstance, but the land use at the state land 48-acre parcel, its zoning actually is 2-acre lots, although the land use allows for 1-acre lots. So a lot of times, just based on, again, historic, way that things have happened historically, I think that was the land use that was the most fitting for the boulders at that time.
Okay, then, continuing through your staff report to where you have the first black and white, not this one, well, this one is fine.
Yeah.
I see down on the bottom that it shows the 30-foot setback from the front, and the building is within the 30-foot setback, right? You just got that little stem wall or that little garbage
Yeah,
container wall. But then if you go 2 pictures further down your analysis,
Okay,
keep,
well, let me look at my analysis.
or the one that was in our packet at least,
In the report,
yeah.
when
This
we were
is-
looking at views, after the,
Well, I'm just asking a question, Mr. Chairman. I don't have the page there, or the title. The title of it doesn't have a title. The Cedar Wall Residence is the title.
Yeah, I don't know what page you're on.
26,
Oh, I'm there, yeah.
page 26.
Okay,
Yep.
look at where the 30-foot setback line is there.
I'm trying to find page 36. Are you, so you're talking about in my report, if we start on the first page of my report, the second, there's the development standards table. Are you talking about those 2 images with the blue property boundaries around them?
No, after the public notification listing, the address listing, everybody that was contacted, go past all that.
Okay.
26.
I don't
I'm
see
sorry, on mine, it
got
doesn't give me the page numbers. I apologize.
Well, it's actually labeled, I think it's the A1, A2, A3 sheet. If you should look at a sheet index, it'll say Cedar Wall Residence.
So you said after the notification list, there's
Yeah.
this
Correct.
this
A few
picture
pictures down.
from here even? This one here?
It's-
Oh, you're not looking at that.
no,
Sorry.
You haven't changed anything on the screen, so.
I don't have that. I understand. I apologize. I'm just getting used to our new system here.
Yeah,
Okay.
Go a couple more.
yeah.
Well, I don't have that.
She
That's
doesn't
the
have
last
the other
I don't have
image.
that one.
But are you talking about, it's the site plan A1?
A1 to A2, A3 it's called, sheet
Yes.
index. Uh-huh.
Okay. So what is your question with regards to those?
Okay, well, I don't,
I see page 26, okay.
Isn't that what you're on right here? You on this?
Yeah.
Yes.
no, I'm not, I'm further down.
Oh, are you? Well,
Oh,
this,
no,
this
but
one
look at
has,
that.
yeah, this,
That one
Yeah.
works. If you look at that, look at where the front setback is on that drawing.
I have page 26, where the front setback is. It just,
guys, it has the title block.
That looks fine.
I mean, you're saying that the setback line goes a bit further past the house than
It goes
on,
into the house.
Yeah,
So if you had a surveyor do both of these, I would say that surveyor was,
I guess, I think that's a question for the applicant. I wasn't concerning myself so much with the front yard because this is a rear yard setback
Still on the corner.
question.
Yeah, we went, if I may speak, my wife and I went to that area yesterday, and with the backyard the way it is in a mountain slope, and putting in here, and the front doesn't change at all, it's, you know, for 10 foot for the pool, back in there, not following up anything at all, I think it looks fine.
Mr. Chairman, I don't doubt that, and I'll probably vote to approve this. But I am suspect of, presumably, these are stamped drawings.
I'm gonna let the applicant answer
Okay,
that
these
question,
are
that's
two
not a
stamped
question for
drawings,
me.
And they're showing different setbacks.
I don't think the setbacks are different. I think that you're right, the graphic, for whatever reason, seems to be off. I would say that the request is still the same.
And
Again, I'm focusing on the rear yard setback.
I understand that, but,
But I think that would be a question that for
Okay.
the applicant.
thank you.
Any other questions? Any from presentations from owners and whatnot?
Just to make sure, I just wanna make sure I'm clear on this. So it's right now 30 feet setback, but you're asking for the 10 feet
Yeah,
into it, the setback for the pool and spa?
Right.
Okay, got it.
I know we kind of say it a little bit backwards. It shows it's 20 feet from the
Right.
property line, but the encroachment is 10 feet.
10 feet, so
from-
I just wanna be clear on that, so we're
Yeah.
talking the same thing.
Yes.
Okay, great,
Okay, Thank
thank
you.
you.
is there an applicant presentation? Ah, recognize this guy.
Chairman, Commissioners, my name's Tyler
Oh,
Green.
please get
I'm
near
the-
the speaker, please.
My name's Tyler Green, I'm the architect for this project. I provided a little site plan. You know, I think I've done quite a few pool variances in the boulders. I think, the issue is most of the houses that have pools in the boulders have variances. The lots just aren't big enough to get the pool within the setback lines, as you can see on that diagram. There's a big boulder outcropping on the back patio that we're trying to maintain. The big wash that we've already discussed. I think this is really the only opportunity to build a pool there. I think many of the other houses have pools, so I don't think this is a special privilege, but I think it's just allowing the homeowners to use their property as their neighbors do. Any questions?
Yes, explain to me how you have two stamped drawings with the setback line in different places.
He's talking about your site plan here. Shows the house, it shows the house kind of imposes upon the front yard setback compared to the diagram you have up on the screen.
I believe, yeah, there's certainly a mistake there. I believe that setback line is drawn further back. The house is that drawing is from the same survey. The house is in the same location. I think,
Yeah, I wonder if they
I
took it
think
from
that
there.
setback is drawn 35 feet or something for some reason, so that, you're correct, that's a mistake. But the survey stamped by the civil engineer is accurate.
But they're both stamped.
Well, and the house is accurately shown. I think that setback line is the
Oh,
wrong.
that's your stamp.
That's my stamp.
That's not the engineer's stamp.
That is not.
I would say I think the setback line may have accidentally been drawn from the back of the PUE, is my guess, versus from the property line.
Yes, that is exactly right.
You're welcome.
Could you put the correct drawing up on our screen, please? The one that's,
One is on, I think that's right.
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
126, page 26?
No, this one that's up.
That
on
is the
screen.
correct one? Okay.
That one's correct.
Yeah, I can't load that onto.
That's okay, I see 20
The one
versus
you're-
30.
Oh, I guess I could,
Yeah,
actually, I
yeah.
take
The one
that
you're
back.
looking at here is the civil
That's
engineer's
fine.
plan.
I also want to just point out that there's like, what, a hill behind this home? There's like a mountain right there?
Yeah, I should.
So it's
yeah,
right, butted up right
yeah,
against
I
it?
could elaborate, yeah, it's surrounded by open space.
Right.
Big hill behind it, lots of vegetation, no one can possibly see this pool.
Thank you.
Any questions, other questions? Do I have a motion?
I think you just need to open up the public hearing
Oh.
quickly. I know it's a formality, if there might be,
Oh, I'm sorry.
somebody from the public that might, there might not be.
Is there anybody from the public? I don't see, I don't have any verbal requests for speaking.
Okay.
All right.
Close your public hearing closed and
Do I have a motion?
I make a motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
motion to approve, I assume?
Motion to approve.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Motion to approve, yes.
That was just the pool.
You want to call for the question?
All right, so that is, huh?
We got a vote. You have a motion?
Yeah, we have to vote, we have to vote.
No, you had a motion and a second.
All those in favor, didn't you hear?
Yeah.
Okay.
Aye.
Yeah.
Aye.
Okay, motion passed and carried.
Move we adjourn.
So this one adjourns, yeah. Yeah, we're only 45 minutes late on the second one. Now we have notice of meeting of the Development Review Board. And the first thing we need to do is approve of the March 11th Development Review Board meeting minutes. Were any questions on that one? Huh?
I need a second to adjourn.
Oh. Go back to the other one, we need to adjourn, got a second? You got a second here? Okay, again, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Now we shall go into the Development Review Board meeting. And we need to approve the March 11th Development Review Board meeting minutes. Any questions, whatnot on those meeting minutes? Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all right. So item number 2, Mr. Tyler Green again.
I'll go ahead and announce
Yeah,
the case.
let
Okay.
Stacy bring this thing up.
All right, sounds great. This is again at the same property, 1029 Boulder Drive, as I mentioned in the previous meeting and at that case presentation, that there was an associated fill waiver request, not related to the pool, but related to another component that the Cedar Walls are looking to develop, and that is a new casita. What they're looking to do is, and for some of our newer members, we will typically have a fill waiver request, although you probably looked in the design documents and there's not actually fill that's being installed or constructed underneath this building. However, the reason for that requirement in the zoning ordinance is to allow for a fair placement of a finished floor. So in this case, because they're looking to span a casita, while it's not physical fill, it still acts in the same manner of, as we look at artificially raising a finished floor. With that said, although there's, again, as I mentioned, it's not physical, but it still acts as though it counters our requirement of not allowing more fill than cut under a building pad. You as the Development Review Board have the authority to approve a request of more, quote, fill than cut. We know where the property's located. We don't need to go into too much detail about the site as well. But I would point out again, important to this request, as it was to the other request, is that there are 2 washes that do converge on site and in limits, as you can see, the developable area of the property. So looking at the site plan again from the civil engineer, you can see where the casita is being located, and it's spanning I would call it almost the 3rd wash, where the 2 washes converge, and it is spanning that waterway. It has, for one, as mentioned in your staff reports, is that it's not realigning or modifying the wash. It is spanning the wash. The casita itself meets the other requirements for casitas in terms of its size. However, and you can see what's being shown is that in the dashed yellow lines, these are retaining walls in which the structure will rest upon. I want to also point out, and he is here as well, our interim town engineer took a look at this project, and as you noticed, a number of conditions that he crafted are in your staff reports as well, and he's available to answer questions related to that if you have any specifically about the structure and the wash itself. To look at what this building would look like is that it's a low-profile building. I don't believe, and the architect will probably speak to it better than I, it does not exceed the height of the existing home. It is basically set at the same finished floor as the existing home. But you can see where the void is particularly on the west elevation and north elevations. And so, again, the best management practices for civil engineering, for stormwater management, Those were all reviewed in conjunction with this proposal, as well as the HOA has looked and given their approval for this proposal. We asked for line of sight diagrams. What those try to relay is if a person is standing in a certain location where those cross sections are taken, what would their viewpoints be? What would their line, what would be in their view corridors? In all of these instances, you can see there's a relationship to, at least on the section BB, the relationship to the existing house. As you saw in the aerial, there is vegetation that does provide for screening. And so, but this gives you an idea if you are standing on the edges of that property. Going back to this citizen participation process, it's varied a little bit. There were 2 responses that were received by both the applicant and the town, or the town, I should say. Actually, the applicant received one, the town received the other. There is a neighbor to the west. They do have concerns with the visibility of the structure itself, as well as the layout in terms of, if we look back at the elevations, that west elevation which faces their property, there are 2 windows, so there is a concern of some privacy. As I mentioned, there are conditions for approval that are attached to your report. If you have any questions about those, I'm happy to answer those before we ask the applicant to make their presentation. Again, this is a little different from the Board of Adjustment. This isn't a public hearing, it is a public meeting, but we would like to engage the public if they have any comments or concerns.
Okay, questions? I think it's kind of creative. It'll be interesting bridging that, but it looks like it'll work. Be a little challenge there. But given the views from the front yard and everything else, nothing really changes. And the heights and everything else meet, so. Any other questions?
The HOA is cool with it?
Is there any comments from the public?
I think the applicant might want to make a statement or presentation. I can put that site plan back on if you'd like.
If you want to do that, Chairman, Commissioners, Tyler Green again. Yeah, just a few quick points.
Just a moment.
The property owners would like to add some additional square footage, which is allowed under Boulders and Carefree's rules. Many of the houses in the Boulders have, similar square footage. As you can see from the site plan, there really is no other place to add square footage on this property. Obviously, there's a large wash, which is creating the hardship that we have to span. It does, as Stacy noted, meet all the other zoning requirements. It's been approved by the HOA. It's surrounded on 2 sides by open space, the 2 sides that the casita is closest to. It meets height requirements. It's screened by vegetation on both sides. As also in the report, the wash crossing has already been approved by a civil engineer, and we will have a soils and structural engineer approve the foundation for it. So again, I think we're not asking for a special privilege here, but we're asking for the homeowners to be allowed to use their home as many of the other homes in the Boulders have. In fact, there's several other homes in the Boulders that do span washes like this. Any questions?
Is it a complete void underneath the casita? Or is there some barrier to stop, or to try and stop things going through?
No, it is complete. It's 4.5 feet high, open, so that there's free flow of water underneath.
Okay.
Yes.
And does that get regularly inspected by any agency at all? I mean,
The way it'll be designed, there isn't any
No need.
for inspection. It's going to be
Okay.
bulletproof, yeah.
okay.
I think there was a requirement that it be cleared regularly to check for anything that's accumulating in, I guess you'd call it the culvert.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that probably is, but it's easy. Like I said, you can walk underneath there. It's easy to maintain.
Any other questions?
I
Okay.
think there might be members from the public who are interested in speaking.
Member of the public? Don't you have to fill something else, Sammy?
No, this is
Okay.
not a town
All right.
council meeting.
Hi, so my name's Greg Paulin, I'm the neighbor, I'm at 1027 Boulder Drive, and I really wasn't prepared to speak tonight, I mostly came to observe and see what the process was, but as I understand it, you are prepared to approve this, the casita drainage situation tonight?
They may.
So if I don't speak up now, this is my only opportunity. So there've been some comments about the view, this does not affect the view. It does affect it to a small extent. We'd like to preserve our relationship with our neighbor, so if my making a statement would change this, I would make a statement. If you were to not approve this because it was an engineering issue, I wouldn't be disappointed. Because once this casita goes in, the view out of our house in that direction will change. Instead of seeing a nice saguaro, we'll see the part of this casino. It does, we do see some of it from our view. So I'll leave that to you. It's, if my objection would would affect your opinion, then I might be more apt to be a little more vocal about it. If I'm just spinning my wheels, then I'm not going to make a big issue of it. That's probably as much as needs to be said from our point of view at this point. Would you like to say something more?
I think you said it mostly. But when I look out my kitchen window, or when I'm sitting in the backyard, I will see the wall and the window of a casita instead of open desert. And the vegetation, there is some vegetation. It's like one tree. And in the winter, when it's sparsely leafed, it's not that much of a blockage. In the summer, it will be more. But
They're ironwood trees, and as you know, they can either be heavily vegetated or no. And when the leaves are gone, we'll see it. Or even when the leaves are on there, there'll be a corner of the casita we'll see. So our view will change.
so
I'd
the
have
house,
to make for you to not approve this. That's up to you.
the house between us and them has got a lot more vegetation, and it's offset enough that we don't see that house very much at all. The casita will be right out our backyard, so that's all I'm saying.
When they developed this section of the boulders,
You're to the west, right? If you're looking at the house, you're to the west.
Yeah, we're right,
I sent a couple of pictures just
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, we're looking at it.
Pick them up and,
426A?
Yeah.
Okay.
But the casita is still inside the property limits. It could
Yes,
be a whole
absolutely.
house.
It's legal, it's very
Yeah.
legal. It's
Yeah.
just gonna be more visible for me.
So it's the window and the corner coming out.
Well, it'll be the side and the
Let's see.
elevation, because it is raised above the wash, and then you've got the height of
Okay.
the casita.
So if you look at the picture, are you looking at the same picture I'm looking at here? To the left there is our home.
Yep.
Of the site. And you can see how the whole back of the house is sort of a semicircular. Our house is set up looking at the view. It's all set up looking out at that view. And that portion of the green space there is in our view, and it's gonna, we'll see. Instead of seeing a big saguaro over here, we'll see the corner of the casita.
Side of the casita.
And I'm sure you deal with this all the time. Maybe that's not an issue. But
No.
if we don't say something now, not gone by. Well, we wish we did.
Well, thank you for your input, but everything fits inside of where it's supposed to be.
Yeah, I think when they developed this part of the boulders, and they planned on the green space out there and everybody's house being offset and positioned such that you wouldn't see the neighbors' homes. We will now.
Yeah. Okay, I think that's all I have
Okay.
here.
Thank you.
Are there any,
Would additional plantings address the obscured view? I mean, in the sense that you would look at a planting, an extra saguaro, for example, as opposed to looking at the edge of the casita?
I think if this gets approved, which it probably will be, we can maybe work with our neighbors that maybe they put a trellis with a vine on that wall or something to mitigate it, or they'll plant a tree, but it won't be the same. It won't be the view we have
comments from the public?
No, I can just say that we'll be happy to work with them.
Excuse me?
I'm sorry, I'm the homeowner.
You wanna come up?
We do have a good relationship with, got loud.
Introduce yourself and where you're from.
I am Jennifer Cedarwall. I'm the homeowner.
Yes, where?
And, that we're looking at. And we do have a good relationship
Oh,
with our
oh.
neighbors. So we would be happy to work with them to try and figure out ways to make it less, if it's offensive to them. There are 6 other saguaros that are out of their view. But, you know, we'll work together to make it as unoffensive as possible, which is why it is actually brought in as close to the house as possible, so as not to stick out. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you.
So I'm just curious, the HOA never brought any of this up, so that was not part of the guidelines of the HOA. When you build, you're blocking the view, as long as you're within the footprint of your property. Yeah, okay, thank you.
But I would add, Commissioner Dahlman, Board Member Dahlman, I do believe the HOA is requiring adding planting, if I'm not mistaken, and that was something that we talked about in our conditions of approval as well. Once the casita's been built, they may be better to, like you said, if you're working with them, identify where are the best angles to add additional landscaping.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Well, I see we have 9 items, conditions for approval. Just to be able to put an emphasis on that, has anyone got a motion that we should approve?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion moved and accepted.
Yeah.
So next item on the Development Review Board.
Okay. Would you like me to introduce that case also, Chairman? Thank you.
Oh, yeah, this is the one on Silver Saddle.
Right, so we have a mountainside case, number 2301 MS, located on Silver Saddle, also in Caltrack Estates too, lot number 90. The applicant is here, Hamid Zarani. I think he's representing the owners tonight. To understand where this parcel is located, it actually borders the city of Scottsdale. It also borders our water tank that you can see actually right at this little notched out corner.
See it?
Oh, I'm sorry, didn't mean to
Right
do
there,
that.
yeah.
So you can see it with frontage on Silver Saddle.
That's the road tank right here?
No,
How
the
do you get to
road.
our water tank? There's a driveway that goes straight
That's the
up.
water tank
Yeah,
right there. Okay, got it.
yeah.
Right along the line. So looking at the sensitive features as we do for these mountainside cases, essentially what you see on this site are very, very steep slopes. I think that was evident probably in a lot of the development plans that you saw. Interestingly, I mean, there are some minor drainage channels, but nothing that's considered something that would be considered a feature or a natural feature on the property. But again, it slopes pretty significantly from the southeast to the northwest. Again, the slope analysis, I think, sort of highlights, you can see that, I would say, you know, more than 75% of the lot has slopes that are steeper than 25%. And even there's another, as we get to above 20%, and again, there's another 17% or so. So very restrictive in terms of the steep slopes on the property in terms of how to develop. Obviously falls under our mountainside ordinance requirements. In this particular diagram, you can see sort of where the house has been located, trying to take advantage as best it can of the lesser steep slopes, but as you can see, a lot of the less slope, again, the lesser steep slopes, the ones that are less than 20% are within a building setback. So looking at the development standards for the rural 190 zoning district, maximum of 6% lot coverage. This is 3.38, obviously complies, as well as complying with the 18% maximum allowance disturbance area. As you can imagine, just getting the standard features of a driveway, utilities, and site amenities, it gets close to the maximum amount of disturbance. Again, complies with setbacks. As we see with these much steeper lots, the cumulative height is pushing the 40 feet, but it still meets that allowed development standards. And in terms of its building height, while the maximum is 24 feet, this will go up to 20 feet. But as we look at some of the design plans, it still has a very sort of linear, low profile appearance. In terms of grading and drainage, those development standards have been met, as well as the cut and fill ratio requirements. In terms of utilities, as it was highlighted in your report, pressures can be an issue in terms of water service up in the Highlands, and so this was discussed with the water company manager, Greg Crossman, that they will be including a private booster pump to serve their home. This does not have any access to sewer, so an on-site septic system will be required. Again, this sort of just gives you sort of an overall idea of the development proposal itself. They did try to take the shortest distance from the main roadway, or the roadway that's adjacent to their property, up to the home. You can see that there's some terraced site retaining walls. Again, that is just to allow for development of the pad itself. Also, you can see, again, being very linear, and this is what we prefer to see when we see a lot of these mountainside cases, is floor plans that sort of work with the topography versus fighting it. But you can also see, again, where there will be proposed and future septic, as well as how the gas line does traverse the property, and that's part of the request along with the mountainside case. As I mentioned, under your purview, aside from the zoning requirements, you do sort of look at the environmentally sensitive features. You do have the authority in terms of utility corridors that traverse the property. We typically like to see those under the driveway. There are just some circumstances where the feasibility of providing those utility lines under the driveway prove difficult, particularly in lots that are up in our highlands or on Black Mountain, where the potential of hitting rock and things like that is much higher. There is also in this request wall height waivers, and that we'll look at in just a moment, as it pertains to the driveway and entry drive court itself. Just to look quickly at the landscape plan, I think what's most important to understand about this plan is you can see that there is a reasonable amount of revegetation that will be part of the development, not only within the terraced walls and sort of the more manicured landscape closer to the home, but also the revegetation in the disturbed areas that are more away from the lot itself, and sort of the disturbed areas of the site, in particular that utility corridor, which is right up in here, as well as the septic systems. With respect to the height waivers, for under mountainside, 7 feet is the highest permitted retaining wall, which is a little different from our normal, our non-mountainside properties. In this case, in order to minimize disturbance of the lot area behind the driveway, to minimize adding, again, a 4th terraced wall, they're looking to install the lower retaining walls adjacent. Again, here, sorry, this is kind of a partial plan, the driveway being in this area right here. They're looking to have the taller walls sort of lower, and then allow for then only going back to a 3rd terraced retaining wall. Again, as you saw in the landscape plan, that will all be revegetated. And what is most important about the wall height waivers in general with respect to the design of the home is that you will not see the walls beyond the home if you are along the public right-of-way along Silver Saddle. I did want to add, although I'm showing it in this plan, actually I'll try on the landscape plan, while there's also a series of terrace retaining walls along the front, The applicant owner is looking to provide for stone veneer on the lowest retaining wall. Again, that's to help sort of blend into the natural landscape, so you don't get a feeling of so many walls, and from the perspective, again, of the right-of-way, because a lot of times walls tend to look like one solid wall. So I thought that was a nice feature to address, again, the difficulty of developing on this property. With respect to the citizen participation requirements, the town has not received or did not receive any feedback from any of the neighboring properties, nor did the applicant. And as part of your report, the conditions of approval have been attached. Nothing out of the ordinary, other than I would highlight again the requirement for the booster pump. And at this time, if you like, I can answer questions first, or the applicant can go ahead and make their presentation.
Well, visited that lot, and there's no question about it being challenging, and the plans seem to be doing well with that at the same time.
Okay, let's move
A lot
on.
of challenging lots in that neighborhood.
Why don't we move on to the applicant's presentation?
Is there an applicant presentation?
Oh, shit.
Hello, everyone. So, I'm Hamid Zarani. Is it?
Yeah, let's get the speaker so we can hear you.
Okay, you can start, John.
Mr. Chairperson and Commissioners, I'm John Klee. I'm here as a consultant to the owner. The owner, you made comments, this looked like it was done very well. The owner has done much of this work himself. We've stood behind him as his foundation in order to build his building. So I'm here to sort of back up his presentation and supply additional understandings or clarifications if necessary.
Hello, board. My name is Hamid Zarani. I'm the applicant,
Say
builder.
what?
Hamid Zarani. I'm the applicant, owner, for this, project. And I would like, to present the plan. And thanks, the team and, the city of, Carefree. It was been, as you said, it has been a very challenging, design and challenging, project for us. So the direction and, ordinance and everything was, very helpful for us. So without any further ado, let's jump into this one. I think we covered that one. So John, I'm going to let you speak to this one.
I'll just walk into the middle of this. You said it, I mean, this is Billy Goat territory. So I grew up in this world building in the hills around Santa Fe, New Mexico. And
So keep your voice near the speaker so we can hear you.
yeah, I just reinforced the fact that this is Billy Goat territory.
Okay.
And I was mentioning the fact that I spent many years in Santa Fe, New Mexico, building on many very difficult slopes in a very sensitive architectural environment. You will note as we go through this that the owner has been very careful about how to, as was said earlier, to build along with the contours rather than trying to issue and create cuts through those contours. He also has a very strong desire, and it's mentioned in all of these graphics, to build this house on one finished floor elevation due to the fact that in many instances in these hills, and I guess I can push on it a little bit myself, there is a need for having access, especially to an older generation, should I dare say that. So that walking up and down on slopes and stairs is not really very healthy. He wishes to build this house on one set finished floor elevation along those contours. The civil engineer has done an excellent job in his grading and drainage issues, in balancing the dirt work and creating the retaining walls. Again, the retaining walls, as you look at the house, let's go to an elevation from below the site, Hamid, or let's look at the section. As you look through the building, a couple of things to note from an architectural point of view is that it's stepped nicely along with the contours. And at the same time, the elevation of the building itself, the home itself, has at least 3 different elevations by a separation of 2 feet plus or minus from every point that you might view it. So it's quite balanced. It's also somewhat cut back and relieved so that the face of the building is on again, all sides has relief to it. So there's a lot of shadow and play in how you view the building. And of course, anyone really viewing that building is going to be either several hundred yards away as a bird would fly, or from the street below looking up. And in this case, again, those retaining walls with some stone on the front of them, the lowest wall that you would see here on the left, is going to be rock veneered and planting so that you have landscape. You can get a good look at it here in this visual. And you can begin to see what happens. We talk about the tall, wish I had a pointer. And that's all right, we'll get along with that. The walls behind the house that are the tallest of the walls are actually hidden by the house itself. So that, again, to experience this would be very difficult. You almost have to get up on their driveway in order to experience the fact that there might be a taller wall than you would anticipate. Again, it keeps the vehicular traffic behind the house, not in front of it. Nobody's viewing a garage. The driveway is a very short distance up to the house, and again, you really can't see the cover on that driveway. The walls and the top of walls and the landscape and the re-veg really pretty much hide it until you come around the corner and begin to see how you can crawl up the hill here. And I mean, I think those are the salient issues. You know, it's certainly you're going to have some questions about it. I hope I covered the big picture. The owner, Hamid here, probably has a few things he might like to add. We'd certainly like to hear your questions.
No, but actually, you described it, perfectly. The one thing that I just, want to add is like, for developing this plan, we explored, different options and different, venues. Like, for the driveway, we tried to, come up with, different things. So obviously, we want to, honor and respect the nature and minimize the disturbance to the area. So that's why we ended up like, having a little bit of difficulty, but we ended up, picking the short driveway, which is, more meaningful. On the top of that, we had like, a neighbor asking, a question where we're gonna, put the driveway and possible like, impact on their view, and we tried to, minimize that as well. So, and for every step of this design, we have some challenges, and we try to come up with best feasible option, respecting all the ordinance and requirement that city of Carefree would require. Any questions so far?
Any questions?
Just for my understanding, the tallest part of the building, if you go back one the other way to the rendering.
Oh, on the rendering.
That one? The
This
corner?
one.
Oh.
That main structure there, that's really not 2 stories, that's just an elevated ceiling?
Yes,
Okay.
it's just one story.
And it's the intention of the owner to have artificial turf and not grass?
Absolutely. We understand the weather situation here, so.
Have you, just out of interest sake, some pictures, the colors look more brown than gray, and in other renderings, they look more gray than brown. Which,
Probably more brown than gray.
okay,
Yeah, it's, the color variation between the graphics.
right.
On the other hand, I think there's been a concern, I don't recall in your mountainside regulations that you have LRB concern or any color stipulations. If you do, we'd like to hear about it. But certainly, we would like to manage
Do you want me to answer that?
Sure.
Oh, yeah, I mean, we have design guidelines that the town encourages be implemented for our developments, and so yes, we have a maximum of 40 for a light reflective value, that we prefer that it be less, yeah.
Any other questions?
Has the driveway been checked by the fire department so that trucks can turn round? Yeah, okay.
Anyone else? I'm good.
If I understand correctly, the highest walls that you're asking about are behind the house again, which goes up, backs up against the slopes. You're saying you won't see them. It's the ones that, the retaining walls in front are within the height guidelines? Is that what I'm hearing? Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Let's see. Boy, so here's,
This is the tall ones.
here's 2,700, here's 2,736.
Yeah, and that's with the big bulb.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, no, I want to make sure it's clear on that. Thank you.
Anyone else? Any more
I'd
comments
just
from the
like to say how beautiful it looks and how sympathetically it seems to fit the contours of the ground. Thank you.
Seems to just
It'd just be a
grow out of
building
it.
challenge, that's all.
Yeah.
Any comments from the public? Do I have a motion to,
Motion to approve.
do I have a second?
Second it.
Yep. All those in favor saying aye with the conditions of approval?
Aye.
Aye. Motion accepted and passed. Good luck.
Welcome to Carefree.
Yeah.
So, we have come to the end of that meeting.
Yeah, right. Another meeting.
Can Stacy please go home? We're playing basketball right now and she's missing
So,
Motion to adjourn.
this is a semi-familiar face for this next board meeting.
Second.
So, this is,
Is the other one?
we call it Carefree Economic Development Advisory Board. Hello, Steve.
Hello. Hey, board members, thank you. I guess we'll keep this pretty informal. I just only have the one topic tonight that's on the agenda, and that is to discuss the kickoff for Carefree Town Hall. And there we go. I just want to set some framework for this. Back in 2015, when they did the Village Center Master Plan, one of the conversations was looking at redevelopment, revitalization, and in that particular conversation, they talked about the idea of best utilizing the town hall site as, you know, for something that has a little bit more, a better use for that particular location as it relates to commercial, in the context of being able to create retail sales tax. And so when we start looking at revitalization and why we went through the exercise, it was partly to figure out how to, you know, keep things from falling apart, but as well as how do we move to the future and make sure that we have sustainability and the best uses for town center. And so, you know, that conversation started to take place. As we updated this plan, you know, we started looking at how you can go about doing that under the state law. If the town owns property, then without a redevelopment area, we would have to put that property up for auction, and that would just go to the highest bidder. And as part of that, they could do whatever they want with it once they bid on the property and purchased it. And there was no control really that the town would have. You can try to monkey through it with zoning and some other things, but at the end of the day, it was really difficult, and so it's hard. Yes, I thought I heard something.
My computer's talking, excuse me.
That's okay. And so it really becomes very difficult to do what you want with your own particular property if you own it as a municipality. And so through redevelopment law, which is one of the important reasons why we went through the redevelopment area process, is it allows the towns to be able to dispose of property in a way that is consistent with the redevelopment plan. And you still have to go through a competitive process, but instead of it being a public auction, what you end up going through is through an RFP process or a request for proposal, or it could be an RFQ, being that if we decide what we want for it, we can go and find the best developer to do specifically what we want. The other option is to go through RFP, which is we'll kind of set the terms and conditions for what we'd like to achieve. but then we would let developers come in with different concepts and ideas of how to achieve those goals. And you know, to go through an RFQ process means that we'd probably need to hire an architect. We would have to really go through those motions to develop that. So my recommendation is that we go through an RFP process. We kind of look with the group here to set it, how we can move forward with getting maybe some good ideas from the development community. But at the same time, we're going to set the terms and conditions for what we'd like to see in general concepts, you know, types of retail, whether it's restaurant, and then the evaluation process. We would definitely be able to have the input as to how we want to go through that and make that evaluation. And the beautiful part about all of it is when you get to the end and you don't like any of it, you can just walk away and not accept anything. So versus an auction, when you go up to sell it, you sell it, it's gone. So that's the advantage of going through this particular process. What I'm here today is really just to kick all of this off. And so we really are striving to do things more in the public light. And with the Economic Development Advisory Board, obviously, it's a public board, and then to also be able to get different input before we make any recommendations to council. So we just think it's a good policy to start moving forward before we get too far into these processes or projects, that we open it up as part of this public process. Again, I kind of walked through this already. And as you can see, what's currently in the plan right now under the vision plan for the redevelopment plan is building K. You can see where the town hall site is. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah. And so when you start looking at that K, it actually shows that Sunshine Way is gone, and that it would actually look to connect into building L, which is 11 Sundial Circle here. So I think as part of what was going through as far as the planning process, there was a goal to eliminate the total number of roads that lead in and out of the town center, kind of create more functional entrances and exits, and better utilize public property. So again, it comes down to setting expectations, and this is really where I want to start kicking this off with the Economic Development Advisory Board. We have a blank slate there. We have a palette that we can work with, but we also have conditions that that do hold us as far as zoning, expectations from the community, adjacency to other development. We don't want to get too crazy with what we're trying to accomplish here. We want to keep it in context, and so before we even get into any RFP process, what I want to do is run it through this particular board, and we can look at the various elements of what would go into an RFP and put that together with this group, and then we'll have to figure out together kind of how we want to engage the general public. And it could be done through a series of open houses. It could be done through more of an open workshop. I mean, there's certain ways we can do that to get specific public input, or we can just simply ask for public input and send out information and see what we get. So there's lots of things. Again, we're just trying to figure it out right now. And I don't know how much time you had to look at the actual report that I put together, but I just kind of wanted to run through the basics here. And then, so what we can look at is the site use. We can look at the design quality and expectations, and that's something that's important because we're talking about creation or changing maybe our design guidelines, or we're reviewing design guidelines and seeing if there's ways that we can modify design guidelines that are better suited for our town center. I know with the hotel, some people had some issues with that. And so when we set a site like this, I kind of call it a keystone project. We can actually do whatever we want. We can build in certain design elements and design guidelines we'd like to see. We can kind of talk about how we would like to see the site develop. We can talk about parking. We can really set those specific goals of what we want to accomplish with it in this particular RFP, and that could, in some level, be a model for how we would like to see other properties revitalize or develop or redevelop. And then as we look to change or modify our design guidelines, we can use this as a model. And then the biggest part for me, it really kind of comes to economic outcome and how we evaluate that. So there's two ways to look at it. Is what's the economic value to the town of Carefree as an entity? We own property, we're going to sell property, we're going to be looking to move the town hall site. How does that all work out in dollars and cents? Can we afford to do something? Is there an economic value we're going to get? How we want to set a value to that is important, and then we can look at what's the value of time that we want to look at as far as how we measure success. So what I want everybody in this group to start thinking about, like, what does that success look like as part of this particular project? And obviously we want to do something that's going to serve the public. We want to do something that has a compatibility to other properties that are in the town center, as well as something that's going to have some sustainability and may even help further spur different revitalization and redevelopment of other particular properties. And so generally, in these cases, you'll look at all the types of revenue that you can get versus just the transactional revenue. So in this case, it'd be sales tax revenue. In most communities, you can look at like what the property tax is, though on a site this small, it probably wouldn't move the needle that hard. But so that's going to be another part of it. So we don't necessarily have to come out even on the transaction, but we can come out ahead if we look at a total return on investment and think of this as some type of investment. As part of the component to this, obviously we're going to have the town hall site, or the town hall itself, to deal with. And so when we start talking about the consideration for this, how town hall fits into this all matters. What are we going to do? As the transaction occurs, is town hall going to have to find a temporary location, or can we work out a deal where where we can stay while things are being designed and development agreements are being worked out, and whatnot. And so then we have to figure out where town hall goes. And so I'll kind of run through some of those options that we're initially looking at. Again, process, and typically in this would be, we would come up with some kind of RFP, we would issue it, we would analyze those proposals. There's an interview process that we'd go through. Then generally what you do is that anybody that we enter into an agreement with, we'd actually enter in what's called a disposition and development agreement, and that would set the terms for the contract of sale, as well as set whatever due diligence period there is ahead of time. So you can usually use it as, you can set that due diligence period, and then once that's reached, then that contract would go into effect for either the sale. But you can also look at it in the context of, if we were to even look to lease the site, that could be a possibility that maybe there's a way that we do a long-term lease, which we can do. So, the question? Oh, okay. Yeah, so that's just kind of outlining the process here. And we can be specific to what the outcomes are in these development agreements as far as timeframes goes, as far as the types of development. So whatever we agree to as far as a project that we accept, we can codify all of that and set the expectations so they're clear, so the public knows what they're getting. Again, I'm just kind of talking about some things to consider here. And this is where we really want you to start thinking about, take a look at the site, and start taking a look at the report that I put together. And then here's some questions that I just want you to think about as you start looking at what you would like to achieve there. And I don't know how much conversation we're going to have today. I know it's been a long meeting so far. I don't know if you've developed any questions. We can still start that conversation. But my goal is to give you this kickoff, and then come back at our next meeting and really have more of a detailed, in-depth conversation about these specific things. Again, here's the site that we're talking about. Again, it takes in the town hall site as well as the parking area behind, and then I've included Sunshine Way in this particular discussion. The other thing that we can look at, and I want you to think about, is Carefree Drive and how that fits in as well. Because right now Carefree Drive currently is, it has a parallel parking, right? But when you look at the parking situation, we have Athens and that building there, which doesn't have any on-site parking. We have the Warren building and some other buildings that are that run west of where the town hall site is that don't have parking. And so they do utilize our back parking lot. But maybe there's an opportunity to put a little bit more on-street parking on Carefree Drive with better site utilization for the town hall site. And so there's going to need to be some way that we have to take in the account for the parking that we'd be displacing, like on Sunshine Way itself. And so when the original parking plan was done for the town hall site parking was not part of that parking plan, but I will tell you it is definitely used currently as part of the parking. One of the things I have done is talk to the adjacent vacant property owner right between us and where the Galleria is, right there on Cave Creek Road, to see if there would be any even opportunity for that to be included in this particular consideration as well. And I haven't gotten a firm answer on that, but he's definitely is engaged in thinking about how this could potentially work. So I'll continue to talk about that as well, or talk with him about that.
Talking about the vacant lot west of the site?
Correct. Yep. So because again, looking at how we're gonna, as we go through the parking planning process as well, that could be a good opportunity for us to maybe solve some of the I'll call it employee or tenant parking issues that we have. Again, here's the site, and you can see that in Sunshine Way there is public parking. Interestingly enough, the people who generally park in that public parking have a parking lot right here, but they choose to park in our public parking because I think it's nicer, and it's a little bit more accessible. But we wouldn't be displacing any parking for 11 Sundial Circle, even though they use it more than anybody else, because there is actually adequate parking in this particular parking lot right here. Any questions about the site or any thoughts?
You talk about the RFP. Have you had any informal discussions with anybody yet at this point, or have you got somebody in mind, or?
That's a good question, yeah. So I have actually started talking to developers because obviously marketing and getting the word out there is going to be extremely important. So I try to get, thoughts and ideas from developers and different types of users about what the market potential is and the market capability. And everybody I brought in is extremely intrigued by the concept and idea of being able to do something there. One of the things that we find that we're lacking right now is, we're almost functionally speaking, we're at 97% occupancy. And so we're almost turning away retailers that are looking to come in because they just really no place to go. So I've talked to some retail brokers, and they said that definitely inside the area there's definitely a demand for more quality retail space, and definitely more demand for restaurant space.
Yeah.
So and I would say talking to residents and community members, obviously Mexican restaurants always number one thing that people ask about. And so when we start looking at the types of things we're going to look at to go here, it has to be compatible and in context with everything else that we're doing. Again, design and ideas are going to be, that's where it's going to get really fun. There's territorial, there's all kinds of ways that we can look at this. And so the question becomes is, do we want to guide a specific design, or do we want to set a specific quality of the type of design we'd like to see and let developers get creative with the type of design they think would fit in better with this particular location, because it can go all kinds of different places. Yeah. And I would say that when you look at our current design aesthetic in town center, it's pretty eclectic.
Right.
So it's like what anybody wants, but we have a chance to be choosy here, so it's kind of nice. And but we also don't want to be unfair to any developers if ultra modern is not going to be something that we're going to choose. We really should be looking at setting the framework for what we would in general like to see. And so that's just something to start thinking about. And like I said, these are just ideas I just picked off the internet. I mean, I think I just typed in garden, restaurant, retail, and just grabbed whatever. It just looks diverse.
Take all 7 of us and finance each one of us go on a road trip for about 3,000 miles in a different direction and come back with pictures and thoughts as we go, and stay off the interstates and go to all the U.S. highways.
Yeah. Well, what's funny is that as people from the community travel, because I've talked about this project a little bit, in general with different folks, I do get, folks who are traveling back east, for wherever they go, especially in the summertime, and they send me pictures back. Oh my God, this place was really cute. This was really nice. Or I had a really good time here. I think this would fit really great in this location here. And so it's interesting to see what I get that back, and it's all over the board of what people think would be really cool to see here. So I would still encourage that from residents to be able to send that, but I'll have you guys go out would be great.
Maybe I'd put something in the local newspapers that people start traveling here this whole summer to take pictures and then send them back in for ideas.
Yeah, well, that's good. That's a point, because one of the things is how we're going to engage the public. Right. This could be actually a pretty fun exercise.
Yeah.
To be able to start getting design ideas, and so that's something we can look to do, and I can work with Madison on that. Is part of our newsletters or kind of communication. Yeah. You just say, hey, we're getting interested in, we're working on this. Do a little blurb on the summary, and then see if we can
what we might come up with.
Yeah, Yeah, I tell you what, some of the best ideas, or some of the really good ideas have come from people who have just been traveling. And then the other thing we needed, and this is kind of the critical part, right, is what do we do with town hall? And so, you know, there's two sites that we actually own. One is over by the Public Works building, and where the water company is. And so, you know, we could look to create maybe some type of municipal complex over there. It was kind of like a first idea. Was there an opportunity that we could work with the owner of Mariachi Plaza to do some type of joint redevelopment project? They're not so keen on that, but it could be something we could still consider to discussing. The other one is here in this particular parking lot. We own the parking lot, and it would actually make it really easy. We have 1,200 square feet above. We already have conference room. We already have this space here, and we have a parking lot right out there that can handle larger crowds. And so it could be a good opportunity for us, you know, when we start looking at what it would cost to do something, that this becomes a more cost-effective solution to be able to build a building or design a building and build a building that would be part of here. And so I can see somewhere where somebody would come into an agreement where they would do the exchange of building us the building in exchange for the property over there, to some extent like that.
Well, that's why you like the second floor, because you don't get bothered near as much by the average age of public and Carefree, huh? Climbing stairs.
Well, I can hear those stairs too.
Jeez.
So when somebody starts walking up and I'm like locking the door, hiding, throwing the shades down.
Well, I like your third one, and that's because I was involved a little bit in this when we went way back with the post office building and the other building over here on Cave Creek Road, and doing some of that switching around where the dog business is now. But you know, I drive through this lot, you know, that whole north third over there on the other side of the buildings here, single story, and the way it's laid out would be absolutely perfect if you could just work something out for the people that are currently in there.
Yeah.
Because it reminds me, because going over to Cave Creek's town hall area or town center, it's all single story, and the way it's laid out for different entrances for the different departments. You know, this situation over here has got, if you just work something out for the north third of these buildings on the opposite side of this parking lot, that would be, and there's empty places around there, maybe a little switching around, a little creativity with what's in there. I don't know, it's a thought, but I would think this would be a superb, personally, it would be a superb location.
Yeah, that's in Board Member Cross. Yeah, or Chairman Cross. I do. Yeah, well, it's one of the things I'm looking at is existing buildings, and as they become available, you know, it's obviously timing is always going to be a part of that. And so, I mean, obviously, we're not going to go condemn anything. So it's just going to be when opportunity presents itself. And right now, like this building over here adjacent to us is for sale, the Carefree Office Plaza, I think it's what they call it. And so, you know, there is that two-story building that actually would lay out really nicely for us, because, you know, obviously you'd have to look at the bathroom situation, which is on the exterior to go to interior, but, you know, those things can be dealt with. And so it's just, those are the things we'll continue to evaluate as we start to.
I think we ought to look hard and creative on the north third of those buildings in the opposite side of this parking lot.
Yeah, and so and I've been looking at these particular buildings here as well. You know, it's just like obviously you have to have.
And everything on main level, no stairways or stuff like that.
Yeah.
We'll leave that up to you.
Well, my office is always going to be upstairs.
Well, that'd be interesting, to say the least.
Yeah, so that's kind of what we're going through right now, and so as these kind of opportunities for buildings that are available, I do present those to, you know, the mayor and to the town administrator, you know, just kind of say we evaluate it. But I also want to just put it out there that to the public that we are considering.
Start thinking about it.
All various different things, and so, you know, so nobody's shocked when they see that we're evaluating or looking at a particular option. The other thing that we can do is a trade. So if somebody were to purchase a building and then do a swap, we can always do something like that as well. And so, so there's all kinds of things that we can try to get creative on how this works. But it is going to be something that we need to think through as we craft an RFP, as we look at how we're going to work with some type of developer to make sure that there's a seamless transition from whatever for town hall operations.
Going back to your timeline.
Whoop. in your memo, I got the impression that you wanted this committee or to be the evaluating entity, or talk to me about, no, you had it, right?
Oh, sorry.
Right here, analyze proposals, back up. Right there, number 2. Is it your impression that this committee would be analyzing the proposals, or that there would be another body to do that?
So the way I would look at it is this commission would be part of analyzing proposals. If there's some idea that we want to bring other folks in to do that analysis, I mean, we're tossing around the idea of specific stakeholder discussions where, we can bring some specific experts in to talk about from the community that have expertise in specific things. But, I see you guys as a recommending body to council. And so, I would definitely, that's something that I want you to think about, is how we think we can build the mousetrap the best, as far as making sure that we're getting a very good analysis on whatever proposals we do. So it really starts out with creating the framework for what we want, and then looking at how we're going to evaluate those particular proposals.
Okay, so you're thinking that these proposals would be evaluated in public then?
I think there would be a certain level of discussion in the public of those particular proposals. And it could be a case where, there can be something that gets done under an executive session to evaluate initially, and then maybe it comes down to a certain level of proposals that we'd like to look at. I don't know, there's so many ways we can look at this to make it work. And I don't think this community is going to let us get away with not doing some level of public review of proposals. And I'm just being honest.
I think you need to be transparent. Because
Correct.
it's a big deal.
Yeah.
So I think you definitely need to be
Yeah,
transparent.
but it also raises if a developer wants to propose something confidentially that's a trade secret or something like that, he'll put it in a proposal, and it'll be public after the process. All our submissions to RFP are public after the award. But I'm just wondering, is that gonna
Yeah, this is the conversation that I think we need to further vet and how we want to handle this. At least be transparent about the process, and so I do want to have some level of public review of what it is that people like, what they see. But at the same time, you are correct. I mean, the deal has to also make sense economically, and so maybe there's ways that we can share that specific information. Obviously we don't want to make decisions by massive committee, but at the same time we need to be able to get input and direction. So I don't, you go to a big town, they just do it, right?
Right.
And it gets done. But we're not a big town, so I'm trying to figure this out, how to do this in the most productive way that gets the most feedback. So
This is lined up pretty good, Steve, and it's just a matter of all of us start just maybe various meetings, sharing some thoughts and whatnot. Now that we have the outline, but I totally agree with that ground out of sell over there, the current town hall, by the square inch, for the crying out loud.
Yeah.
And then, my thought has always been something over here with a large parking lot and individual department entrances and something like that. It needs to happen.
Yeah.
And then we just, like I said, everyone travel this summer, go a different route, just take some pictures of it, go into some of these small towns.
Yeah.
See what you come up with. Might be surprised ourselves.
There's a lot of cool stuff out there, and there's a lot of people with good ideas. So, I don't think that any of us have the corner on great ideas. At some level, I think a lot of people are on the same thought path as far as what we'd like to see there and what the best use would be. I think restaurant has been clearly the number one that people have come up with.
Well,
so.
Steve, it's 6:58.
Yeah. Well, and just so you know, so what I've done is I've put some proposed terms. So I actually have drafted kind of a draft RFP, but I don't want to make anything it's too fast to throw something out there. But what I wanted to do was start walking through these terms that I've come up with, because it's really the heart and the soul of it is going to start with the terms. Then it's going to come down to the guidelines we'd like to put along with these terms of what we're trying to accomplish. So And then it's the evaluation. You know, what is it that we're gonna evaluate this on as far as what we'd like to see, the value it brings to the community, and we'll put that value proposition together. And then that would be the complete part, those would be the ways that, that's what we put in the RFP, as far as what we send out to the community, so they're clear about what our expectations are. So what I would like you to do, and I know you probably don't have the time, if maybe some of you did, but just read through these, and really the goal here is not to do anything that's gonna be too crazy. You know, trying to stick within the current zoning of 30-foot height requirements. Try to look at ways that we can maximize the existing views, try to maximize the opportunity that we have, as far as it being complementary with the restaurant, and maybe hopefully the bank in the future can be another restaurant that's been vacant for a long time, that we can create a really good synergy in and around the sundial, and better utilize the sundial for visitors. I mean, it's great that Sam gets a great view of the sundial, but probably would be better if somebody was paying money to have that view. So those are the things that we're looking at as far as what we're trying to accomplish. And then again, we talked about the parking and how that's going to fit in. So we got to really be conscious about how we deal with that. Again, you know, looking at lot coverage and density is going to be an issue with the public. And particularly, nobody wants to see a 6-story or 5-story building there. And honestly, it would be out of context, so we really do need to keep it in context with the adjacency. And then it comes down to the other things that we're talking about, you know, what kind of, you know, and this is why when we start talking about the circulation planning and parking planning, it's important that when we start looking at Cave Creek Road and what we're trying to accomplish for pedestrian and maybe even some on-street parking, or because this is a site that sits right there on Cave Creek Road. So we have the opportunity to make sure that whatever it is we'd like to see as part of the infrastructure, it can be built in and as part of this particular project. And it could be again, this keystone concept of this is what we want, this is what everything adjacent is going to connect into, and how we're going to design that. So that's the other thing to start thinking about, as how it fits in the context of what we'd like to see with the circulation planning. And I know Susie is part of that particular concept, or that discussion, as part of a representative from this particular board. So that's just things that we got to think about. We have the 12 kV lines that are there that are above ground. Obviously, I think as any type of project happens there, or as we look at development, those things should be coming underground. It's expensive, but it'd be nice. It's just be nice to get those things out of the way. I mean, it does. You talk about, you know, looking at views, and you're trying to put somebody on a deck, maybe, or a roof, or looking back, and they're looking through power lines, utility poles. It's just, and it's really not that much, right? And so they undergrounded it to go for the arch. We can underground it for development. So, but just these things will have costs, and that's why through redevelopment we can look at what's the best outcome, and that outcome could be partly aesthetic, right? That we're setting the tone for being able to put these types of things underground and just make it aesthetically more pleasing as we look at the town center. And again, we talked about Sunshine Way, and you know, one of the things, and actually this was something that Mr. Mattis brought up as we were talking outside, it's just looking at what the true space demand and space needs are. So one of the things that we would probably need to do as in conjunction with this is really start looking at the space needs for the town and what the future looks like, and to make sure that whatever we build meets the current needs, but also meets future needs for whatever we can anticipate, and making sure that we keep the costs the most cost-effective way. So I'm glad you brought that up. And that's what this is about, right? It's about us being able to start to bounce these ideas and start thinking about this holistically, so we make the best decision. And so that's something that we'll need to look at. We'll probably, I don't know, if we'll hire a space plan, or usually with an architect. So if we were to do a deal, I think as part of what we would have to look at is that space planning would be part of whatever design gets done for whatever building gets done. But ahead of time, we can start looking at those particular space needs.
Well, it's good terms to put in the back of our heads here, thinking from month to month on this.
Yep. So, and you know, my goal is obviously to try to figure out how we just keep this on track. And so if we can start to look to get feedback, I'd like to have this conversation in May, but I know we've got the general plan update in process, and I'm trying to be sensitive. I mean, You know, that's going to be an interesting conversation, and I don't want to take away from that, you know, or I don't want to be a second, you know, this is important stuff I'm working on here too, and so,
My goodness,
yeah.
it's loud.
Yeah. And so just making sure that, you know, if we need to, I'd like to keep it on pace though. So if coming back in May at some time would be worthwhile or, you know, to do, I'd like to do that. But then again, I want to be sensitive to their time. And I think Stacy left. Sam, you don't know about the next public hearing. When is that for the recommendation for the general plan? Well, that's the workshop, but when's the public hearing? Yeah, I just need to make sure that we're not overstepping. I don't want to overlap with that. So maybe if we set a separate meeting and we stay specific to that, if that's something of interest to you guys, we can do that, you know, maybe later in the month, because then everybody starts to leave and vacations and all that. So I just want to, I just want to start, I kind of want to get some more thought on these specific guidelines, if we can, and kind of get those discussed. And it may not be that long of a conversation, but even thoughts on site.
Is it too specific to say the RFP or to specifically indicate whatever is developed has a respect for dark skies and has either minimal signage or consistent with what's elsewhere in the town center?
It's we can do whatever we want. Yeah, we can say just dark sky. We can even dictate the type of signage we'd like to see. Again, it comes down. That's where it comes down to this design guideline, where we set the tone for what we'd like to see signage looking like on these particular buildings. And I'd like to be able to use a model that will allow other building owners to say, you know, that's quality signage, and that's the way we should head. These are the kinds of things we should be thinking about. So.
Yeah.
Do we come, sorry, do we come together for a meeting to discuss this? Or are we coming individually to you? What are we doing? How are we doing this?
Well, and again, so I guess what you can do is if you want to send me thoughts and ideas, you know, in between here and there, I think that'd be great.
Because these dates are coming up quickly.
They are coming up quickly, yes. If you want to send me some thoughts and ideas ahead of time, and then what I can do is then I can consolidate that as part of, so that way we have a presentation that isn't all over the board. We can get a little bit focused on the things that were brought up and the things that are specific to what we wanted to discuss. So I think to start, what I'd like to do is to start with what we'd like to see on the site. And start to set the tone for what would be in an RFP for what we'd like to see.
On the town site.
On the town hall site, yeah. And then what we can do is I mean, if we've got time, then we can start going into what we'd like to see for our town hall site. You know, I think there's different processes for steps. And so for right now, I think this is where I'd like to start, but it's up to you guys. I mean, we can.
Yeah. No,
We're making this up as we go, you know that, right?
I know that.
In your mind's eye, is this development going to be oriented towards residents or towards visitors?
So I think both. And I think, you know, so one of the things this town, I think, struggles with is its identity of position. Like, where do we fit into the marketplace? And I think what we've seen is that the market really supports specific things. And restaurants have been one of the things that have been supported by both residents and visitors alike. And so, you know, I think that's where we really need to start focusing on as how this fits into a vision. And that's actually kind of maybe even a larger conversation that we've been having about where does Carefree fit into a marketplace. And, you know, and so we talk about the gardens in the same respect. I mean, who do the gardens appeal to? Obviously, out-of-town visitors, you know, they want to see the sundial, they want to see. But at the same level, the whole Carefree experience, the gardens, the restaurants, the retail, the whole part of it is something that we want to market to a larger, you know, market, whether it's a 20, 30-minute market or whether we're looking at, you know, the 5 million or 4.5 million people that live here, you know, to be more accessible or more on their radar as far as how we fit into this particular marketplace. And so those are the things that we're working on and how that fits in. And so when we start thinking about what we want and what we are, you know, all of our restaurants and all of our retail is unique here. A lot of it's locally owned. Do we want to continue with that, you know, or does somebody want to see a Barrio Queen? Does that fit in or does that not fit in? So those are things that we need to start thinking about as well as what it is that we want. So I would say that the community likes the idea that we have this really unique local. I think our our niche in the overall marketplace is that we've got this real local pedestrian, I mean, Kierland's pedestrian friendly, but it's the same stuff you can see in a lot of other places. But you come to Carefree and it's completely different, different environment. And so that's something we need to be conscious of as we walk through this particular process. And that's why I think the guidelines that we set out are going to be key, and we can put that in the guideline, right? That we'd like to see. We are unique and local, and we'd like to maintain the idea of something that's unique. And it could be new, and it doesn't even have to be local, but Keeler's isn't necessarily local, but it's local enough. But it definitely is different and unique. So that's kind of where I'd like to start, and then we can start looking at design ideas as well, and then we can start looking at kind of the town hall ideas and concepts. And if we can do all that in one meeting, we could do that. If we wanted to break that up into different conversations, we're not in a hurry. We've been sitting here for the last 30 years like this, so this building's been there since 1958, so we definitely have time. I just want to make sure we do this right.
Isn't this supposed to be part of the general plan? I mean, isn't this like, well, but we're talking about the themes and the way things look with signage and buildings and all that is part of the general plan, so isn't this kind of fall into it on a
Not really. So I'd say
subsidiary level? Oh,
so
no?
the general plan is going to be more of a general guiding document. So at some level, we can say that the town center wants to be something.
Yeah, that's what I've been hearing.
So we just want to make sure that we're consistent with what that wants to be, and revitalizing it. But what's revitalizing? Again, it's you can do something that would not fit. It'd be a home run as far as economics, but might not be a great fit for what we're trying to accomplish, and it may not generate a complementary mix of what it is we're looking to do. So we just need to be thoughtful about how we're approaching it. So I guess we can look through the general plan, but I think a lot of people have already kind of talked about, we're not recreating the town center. It is what it is, so it's working in the context of making what we have better. That's why I perceive it. The probability? No, there's a chance. There's a chance. It all comes down to whether or not it makes sense economically for the guy who owns it. So we just got to kind of vet this discussion a little bit further because, what's the chance that he's going to develop it any time soon? I don't know. He hasn't mentioned anything. Yeah, so one of the things I'm also going to have to do at some point when it makes sense is we're going to have to get an appraisal done for our site so we actually know what the value is. But I don't want to get it done too early. We'll need to do that probably before we go out to RFP. But it's just something that just to keep in the back of your mind. I don't know how long this initial process is going to take, and I don't want to set a timetable to it. I just want to do it right. I want to make sure everybody's comfortable with it. Yeah. Yeah, so what I'd like to do, though, I don't want to, drag it out, for unnecessarily, but I'd like to have a series of conversations about the topics that would go in RFP, and that would be, what we'd like to see on the site, what we'd like to accomplish. The other component to that is going to be what kind of deal makes sense for us and what it is we'd like to see as a value proposition, and then the other one's going to be the evaluation process, and then the town hall site. So those are really the things that we need to kind of focus on. And we can take it off, one by one and from meeting to meeting, or, we can try to maybe do two things at once, or however you guys would like to do this. So. Yeah, there you go. Well, the general plan's gonna be, you know, at least your part will be done pretty quick here, so. So we,
Yeah, no, I discussed it many years ago, a number of years ago. So,
right,
but now, this is put together better. Thanks.
cool. All right, well, take a look at what I put in the report, and if you've got any comments, send that back, you know, things and ideas, and then if there's specific topics you'd like to talk about at the next meeting, kind of let me know, and then I can kind of formulate the agenda based around that. And then I'll try to advance it, you know, with these things. And if it looks like there's not a lot of conversation to be had on that, on some of these issues, we can start maybe bringing some of the design elements as well. And maybe that's what we can look at is both what we'd like to see with the site and with the design. The other thing we can do is I can also bring Clint Miller in, who's obviously an architect, and maybe have him do some type of, you know, some illustrations and some other things, and maybe we can do that collectively together. So, yeah, cool. Thanks. I wish I could be more definitive about this. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. I appreciate it. Yep. And then, you know, what we'll do is we'll make sure that we'll get more people. We'll have good we'll try to get more communication out to let the public know that we're having this discussion so they can participate. You know, we got our 2 fans over there, though. I appreciate you coming. Thank you. Thanks for the comment, by the way. Did you guys have any comments? Yeah, formal. It's still a formal board.
Well, it says adjournment on it, so.
Yeah.
Second, all those in favor? Aye. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. This is going to be fun. Yeah, I know. I'm hungry too.